Good morning. It's the Penguins morning regroup here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Matt Gajtka with Dan Kingerski. Great to be with you as we turn the page into March. The Penguins have now played 20 games. Pretty good sample size in this COVID shortened season and a lot to discuss in terms of their issues after a very disappointing 2-0 loss to the Islanders at Nassau on Sunday night. Dan, one of the more disconcerting efforts of the season, if not the most. You could tell from Mike Sullivan's post-game press conference, if you happen to catch that one, either on your site on Pittsburgh Hockey Now or on the AT&T Sportsnet broadcast. There wasn't a lot to say, and I think Sullivan's mood mirrored that of many Penguins fans. That was a tough one, and I know it's back-to-back, their first back-to-back of the season, but again, they're not traveling very much. Malkin mentioned it after the game that travel's been easy this season. No real excuse there. It shouldn't be a fatigue question at this point. One of those games that makes you question a lot of things about this team, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does, Matt. Look, I don't think Sullivan was mad over one game. It's the fact that the Penguins have done this several times through the season. They've escaped several of these efforts with a couple goals in the third period or, 5 or 10 minutes of good hockey, which has earned them a point, or actually almost always 2 points. It's earned them because they win in overtime or the shootout. But this time, the chickens really came home to roost, and there was no second effort or late surge that could put them, into overtime. Sullivan has every right to be upset because, look, there's just too many players on the team who have one good game, two bad games. And then you're like, oh, well, let's spank them for a second. Then they have a good game. You're like, okay, we've got them back on track. And then they revert. I'm looking at Kasperi Kapanen for one there. And so I'm sure he's eminently frustrated, as probably is Sidney Crosby. I mean, he and Brian Rust, Crosby and Rust, have been playing fantastic all season. It's just been this awful hodgepodge of which other player might join them on any given night.
I'm glad you brought up Kasperi Kapanen. He seems pretty symbolic of the Penguins. Like I mentioned on Twitter last night, it looks like Pavel Bure on one rush through the neutral zone and then basically nothing. The rest of the shifts are duds. You see why he's bumped back down off the Crosby line, trying to make it work with Malkin, occasionally getting benched altogether, as we saw a couple of games ago. So the inconsistencies run through the lineup, and it goes all the way down to goaltending, defense as well. But I think for me, Dan, the key issue right now for the Penguins is that they can't generate any kind of consistent attack shift after shift. It's the Crosby line doing pretty well for the most part, although the last two games have been downers in that regard. But you can't count on Malkin. The Bluger line is fine, but they're not going to generate any kind of consistent offensive attack. They're more of a possession line, one that defends well and also keeps the puck and maybe hopefully allows you to go on the attack again after they get off the ice. So there's just an issue with consistency, whether it be within the context of a game or from game to game. And yeah, to your point, they've been down 2-0 in each of the last three. They've come back all these times. They have 7 wins beyond regulation out of their 11. I think they've trailed in 9 of their 11 victories. You look at the standings, they've dropped a point out of playoff contention right now in the East Division. And with the Flyers coming to town, at least the Penguins get to return home. But I have a hard time coming on any conclusion except for the fact that they're lucky to be where they are. They could easily be down where the Rangers are or the Devils or the Sabres. And I know they haven't played the Devils or the Sabres at all yet. And I touched on that in Pittsburgh postgame over the weekend with Hunter Hodes. But at the same time, the product they put out there just isn't conducive to finding those consistent results. And they've had some grinding moments where they've gotten through difficult situations. Give them credit for mental toughness there, but at a certain point, you've got to be mentally tough enough to be ready to play from the start and to have that mentality. And they seem to be caught in between. Are we good enough to let off the gas for certain stretches, or are we not good enough? And I wouldn't blame them if they looked at the standings right now and said, you know what, maybe we can get away with this. But they're just slowly bleeding their way into kind of a mediocre zone right now. So I have a hard time finding any kind of easy solutions for Mike Sullivan, except to continue to like you've mentioned a couple of times on the website, take away ice time. That's the number one tool that a coach has at this level, at the pro level. So that's my solution, is to continue to dictate, what's being rewarded through playing time. How do you feel that Sullivan can perhaps adjust something? Is there any other way that he can go about it here?
Well, there are very few things Sullivan can do. As I'm actually writing as we speak about Jim Rutherford really handicapping this team, because he went all in on Kasperi Kapanen and Jason Zucker. So the Penguins really don't have any assets left to make a move, to add a player. They almost have to trade a bigger player to get something in return, and so that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Boy, I'm way too close to the camera. Let me let me back up. What Sullivan, I think he has a couple options left, a couple arrows in the quiver. I don't necessarily understand why he hasn't gone with Jake Gensel and Evgeny Malkin yet. That it was so good last year, and Crosby and Rust seem to have a decent enough chemistry where that can work. So, because Malkin, I think, is playing better. He's just struggling to find someone to play with, and the bottle rockets they've put beside him, Zucker and Kapanen, clearly don't fit. So what do you do when you don't have a second line and you don't have a fourth line? Yeah, Sunday, or what is today? Today's Monday, so it would have been what, Thursday in Washington?
Yes, that sounds right.
All of the days run together, Matty. Thursday, when they had a lead, you saw it was first line, third line, first line, third line. They did the same thing in the third period last night. First line, third line, first line, third line. That's not a good way for a team to be. And it's not like I'm blaming Sullivan. He doesn't have much of a choice. He put the lines in a little bit of a blender to try to find something, but it's just not there for this team. So until they find some energy, and I think energy can spring from some toughness. I think those two issues are very related. They're going to flounder. They're going to go sideways. They're going to fight to be in that fourth or fifth spot all season until something changes.
I thought it was pretty instructive last night in the third period. The Penguins played better in the third, but it's the same old script, right? But you saw Sidney Crosby running around, for lack of a better term, throwing hits. I think he threw at least 3 legit body checks trying to get his team.
Yeah, I mean, that's you do not want Crosby cross-checking. Who was he getting involved with?
Was Beauvillier maybe? Or Bailey?
Yeah, it was Beauvillier.
Yeah.
Beauvillier is a nice player, but you do not want to take Sidney Crosby off the ice over a pissant like Beauvillier. You just, a team, you don't want to do that. But there really isn't anyone else to do the dirty work. And I don't know, Matt, you and I watched Crosby play like that before in the 2017 Stanley Cup Final. It's a bit different when it's the Stanley Cup Final versus a game on a Sunday afternoon, game 20. There just needs to be someone to pick up that slack.
Yeah, you're putting a lot on the guy that you're counting on to drive offense, basically shift in and shift out. If you're also asking him to be the energy guy too, and give him full credit. I think Sid realizes there's an issue going on here, and that there's just not enough juice in the tank, to use a Mike Sullivanism. And they have to, and he's going to have to resort to maybe some different type of tactics. It's a nice throwback once in a while to see the type of Sid that we saw, the fiery Sid from, you mentioned the Cup Final in 17, but I harken back to his first few years in the league when maybe he got a little too much into that and allowed that to take away from the things he should be focusing on. Well, speaking of focus, there's got to be a focus on special teams here. All the talk about 5-on-5, not great. The Penguins, I think out of their last 8 games they played against the Islanders and the Capitals, that big stretch there, their 4 worst Corsi games of the season at 5-on-5, shot attempt percentage have come in that stretch. So even though they've won, 6 of their last 10, a modest push here. they haven't played commensurate with that type of a level at 5-on-5. They've actually dipped down below average in terms of the season. So they've played a little bit worse at 5-on-5. And the special teams just are 25th and worst in the league. I believe the power play dropped below 25th. The PK was 27th going into last night's loss to the Islanders.
And then they gave up 2 goals.
Mike Vellucci and Todd Reardon, the onus is on them right now, and Mike Sullivan. I don't want to take it off the head coach too, but you look at coaching. For me, when you talk about special teams, it's about coaching. It's about game plan. The PK still looks confused to me, Dan, whether they're being aggressive or whether they're being more passive. And the power play has been beaten up ad nauseum. I don't even know what more you can say, except they got to continue to move their bodies and continue to not just pass the puck around the perimeter. I think they know this, but it's one matter of knowing it, and it's another matter of actually doing it. But really, both areas of it, PK and power play, I think the penalty kill hasn't gotten enough criticism so far. What are you seeing on the penalty kill? Are you seeing it like me, where they look like they're just not sure who's supposed to be where? You saw it on the Bailey goal, or pardon me, the Pajot goal last night.
Yeah, it is such a cluster that it's difficult to break down. I did a story last week when they were in the midst of that great run against Washington. Okay, here's the things they did well. They attacked. So maybe we should start there. When they were killing those penalties against Washington, they were attacking. They were making the Capitals decisions for them. They were pushing the Capitals to where they wanted the Capitals to be, not where the Capitals wanted to be. So you saw attacks both on the forecheck, through the neutral zone, and at the blue line. That kind of confused Washington, and Washington had a difficult time getting set up. And then the Penguins even attacked after Washington got that umbrella set with Ovechkin in his office. That worked. I didn't see that same attack against the Islanders this weekend. I saw the Islanders get set up. I saw the Islanders be able to work the goal line, be able to work the low corner, which once you get the puck in that corner, Matt, now the corner of the box has a decision to make. Do I go cover the puck? Do I pressure the puck? Do I hang back? Because the Islanders put 1 or 2 guys near the net as well. And so the Islanders created some chaos, but by the same token, the Penguins sagging in the zone and not pressuring also allowed the Islanders to get an extra man in the dirty scoring zone, which last night you saw just an easy 7-foot shot right past Tristan Jarry. You're going to get that goal 8 of 10 times. You get a puck on a guy's stick right there without 2 bodies, or at least 1 body on him. So yeah, Mike Sullivan has in the past, Matt, taken over for his assistants when Rick Tockett's power play was struggling. Sullivan took it.
Didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. It's Tocchet had his wings clipped for a little while, and I don't know if that ever changed, but I don't know which unit he would take over right now. You've got the overly complex power play where they want to be like Harlem Globetrotters and the Princeton pick and roll offense at the top of the zone, versus the PK, which has an identity crisis. And I know I'm talking too long here, Matt. Let's not undersell the lack of personnel on the Penguins PK. The fourth liners on this team are just not good enough, and they're being asked to perform a role maybe a little above what they're capable of.
All you have to do is look at, you can get beat on the penalty kill when they make a great cross seam pass, the opponent does, and it's a great play. The Capitals are capable of that, but the Islanders just fed it right to the doorstep. You had Pajot yesterday, you had Saturday, it was Brock Nelson untouched at the lip of the crease, and 2 Penguins around him. One of them should have been on him, at least taking his stick, but it's not happening. Guys look, to me, still a little confused 20 games into the season, and I realize all the usual COVID caveats, not a lot of practice time, no training camp, but we're at the point now where you should be able to at least ingrain some of those habits. And like you mentioned, there have been some decent stretches, Caps games in particular. There should be enough opportunity there to get some positive reinforcement when you do something well and what you're doing well. I love the aggressive approach when it is being employed consistently. But you know how they talk about it in pretty layman's terms here, Dan. When one guy goes and the other guy doesn't, then you have a problem. Everybody's got to go, and I don't think we're seeing that from the penalty kill. I'm no coaching expert here, but that's what my eye tells me. I've seen your breakdowns of it, and maybe it was just the imminent danger of the Caps power play. Perhaps the respect the Penguins had, they thought they had to throw themselves at it in order to stop it, and it worked. A lot of times, to borrow a phrase from a coach that we talk about often, safe as death on the PK. And if you're a longtime NHL fan, you know where that one comes from.
Actually, I don't know where that comes from.
Torts, your boy Tortorella. That
My
was
boy
from the 2004 Stanley Cup run for the Lightning. Yeah, that was the mantra, safe as death. Back when safe was everything in the NHL in the dead puck era, he was going the other way.
You know, Torts, I was part of that organization at the time. So I don't remember him saying that, but yeah, I wish I had enough time and enough moxie when I was in the organization to grab Torts's binder, because everyone got a binder with CDs. Remember those things?
Okay.
Yeah, like DVDs on the schemes and the breakouts. You got that in the off season, and you had to know that by the time training camp started. And from Vinny LeCavalier was the captain of that team, and Brad Richards, all the way down to the guys fighting to be on the ECHL roster, you had to know it. Yeah, he innovated a lot of stuff that Mike Sullivan is still doing, and a lot of the NHL is doing.
There's that Sully Torts connection. Again, a couple things more here on the morning regroup, and thanks for joining us. Our first edition of this, we're going to bring this to you after some games. Give us some time to digest, not just Pittsburgh post game, but you're thinking about the game, especially when it ends as poorly as last night's. You're thinking about it the first thing when you wake up in the morning. I've always been like that too, where all of a sudden in the AM, in the light of day, you can address an issue perhaps a little bit better than you can immediately after. In terms of the defense, Dan, we're going to have a decision to make for the Penguins coaching staff when Brian Dumoulin gets up to speed. And my thought on this one might be maybe a little unpopular, could be a little unconventional, but for me, I would actually sit Marcus Pettersson, who I feel like doesn't bring a lot unique when you look at his skill set to that blue line. I would keep Mike Matheson. I would keep Pierre-Olivier Joseph in the lineup, a couple of left-handed, left-sided guys. Once Dumoulin comes back, I'd play Dumoulin with Letang. That pairing has proven to be effective for long stretches, both in the regular season and in the playoffs, as we well know. So that's what I would do when Dumoulin comes back. It seems like it's maybe not imminent, but perhaps could happen this week with the 3 consecutive games against the Flyers, 5 in a row coming up at PPG Paints Arena. That's my feeling on it. That's where I feel like the shuffle should settle. I liked seeing Joseph with CC. I think that's a nice offense-defense pairing on the backside. And I don't want to see Letang with anybody but Dumoulin once he comes back.
Yeah, Letang has struggled over the last couple of years with anybody but Dumoulin, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. You think of last year when they put John Marino on the left side there for a while. That didn't work. And then they had to put Jack Johnson there. And to that point, Jack Johnson was having a pretty good season, and both he and Letang just cratered at that point. And I feel like Pettersson is cratering a bit with Letang too. I will say this though, Matt, as much as I like P.O. Joseph and as much as I think he's the future of the blue line, I think when Dumoulin comes back, you sit him for a couple games. I'm not saying long term. I'm saying a couple games. Give the kid a breath, a little refresh, a little reset. I see him kind of treading water right now. I see the forecheck getting to him. I see him kind of in the wrong spots, or just he's a little bit lost. And playing with Cody Ceci helps a lot because Ceci is so steady. You go with Pettersson, Ceci for a game, maybe 3. Then you maybe reintroduce PO for 1 or 2 to see how he's doing, and then we begin to make some decisions from there.
And what do you think about the Flyers? I don't even have to look this one up. This is the first time in Penguins history they will be playing 3 consecutive games against the same opponent in the same venue, regular season or playoffs. It's one of the functions of the year. The Flyers have had plenty of players out due to COVID. They're right there with the Penguins on the playoff fringes in the East Division. I feel like the Flyers are overrated right now, and all due respect to the team that Ron Hextall built over there, but they, much like the Penguins, are getting results at a level that's above what their actual process is. And they're outshot. Talk about the Penguins, their shot metrics going down. The Flyers, just look at shots on goal. They give up a lot. They don't get a lot. And they've done well to get some goaltending from Carter Hart. But clearly, goaltending is a huge contributing factor to their success so far. And they've buried some of their chances more than you might think. But I don't think this is a sustainable process here for the Flyers. So not that I'm saying it's an opportunity for the Penguins to make some hay, but I don't think the Flyers are necessarily as tough of a nut to crack as certainly not the Islanders or even the Capitals at this point. What have been your observations on Philly? We haven't seen them since way back in mid-January.
Well, Matt, just going back to last year, I've called Philadelphia a paper tiger probably a few or a handful of times, but I've come to the realization you throw Corsi out the window when you talk about the Flyers. You throw all that stuff out because they're an Alain Vigneault team. They're going to play that 1-3-1 counterattack. Just think back to Vigneault's very successful Rangers team. You had Lundqvist in net, who was a world beater. Carter Hart is a world beater despite his recent little dip. And they just play wonderfully structured hockey. It can look terrible on the stat sheet, but they get the win. And it took me a while to come to that realization with Philadelphia is another Alain Vigneault team. So I think Philadelphia is a lot tougher out or a lot tougher team than maybe you or I give them credit for, even though you look at their roster on paper as well, and it's not very good. I've not been overly impressed at any point with Nolan Patrick or some of the guys in their bottom six. Abe Kubel is a little bit of a loose cannon, and I certainly would take him on my team, but they need a bit more offense in that bottom six. Yet they just find a way every single night. So it will be a very difficult test for the Penguins. And I don't know if you've noticed this as well, Matt. The volume got turned up over the last week or two, 10 days in the NHL. Something clicked, something happened. They got through the Lake Tahoe stuff, and everyone just went, oh, okay, we're almost at half season, and turned the volume up. I thought the Penguins even had an extra step against Washington, and those games were at a higher pace. And the Islanders had a higher pace than they've had. So I think it's game on from here.
I noticed that, funny you mentioned that, I noticed that on Saturday night. It just felt like with about 10 minutes to go, both teams realized, oh, we're tied. Every game's a division game, and we're looking at game 20 coming up here pretty soon. And it felt like something changed. Now, the Sunday game, that looked like a back-to-back game, and maybe more so for the Penguins than the Islanders. Their style, I think, is more conducive to grinding one out in that fashion. But I do agree with you. The games are pretty fast and loose in the opening, 5 or 6 weeks of this season. You saw a lot of breakdowns, things like that, but teams are starting to get it together. And you play a team like the Islanders back-to-back, you realize just how tough it can be to generate consistent offense. Quick look at the standings. Capitals in first place in the East, 28 points, 21 games played. Bruins have fallen off a bit. They've lost 4 in their last 10, all in regulation. So they're tied with the Isles for second. The Flyers hold down that 4 spot. And like I said, the Flyers come into town here with 25 points, and the Penguins in 5th with 23 points. Rangers after the Flyers. The Rangers are 6 behind the Penguins right now. So there's a little bit of a separation between top 5 and the rest of the 8-team East Division. But the stakes are high. Like you said, almost 50% of the way through this shortened season. A few more games. End of this week will be really close to the halfway point. And then we'll see. We'll get another chance to update the look here of this team. And Ron Hextall, Brian Burke, they've had a few games to look at it too. So hold on to your butts, as Samuel L. Jackson might have told you a couple of decades ago. This could get interesting. Trade deadline pressure is going to be building too. Dan, I enjoyed it. We'll do this again on Wednesday morning, okay? We'll talk to you then.
Sounds like a plan. Have fun.
All right. Thanks to everyone for watching the PHN Morning Regroup. The name is in workshop. We'll see what we can come up with here. It's a Penguins chat to follow up on what Dan used to do on the noontime hour. We always enjoyed those. Hope you